Alright, so this video is about what high blood pressure is physically, like what does it mean is going on in our body, and some of the dangers of having high blood pressure. So the first thing I kind of wanted to ask is how do we get the nutrients and the oxygen that our organs need to where they need to go? And it happens through our blood, right? Our blood is what's carrying oxygen and nutrients to our brain, our liver, our muscles, our lungs, all these different organs. And so how does the blood get to where it needs to go? How does the blood travel to these different destinations? And it moves through these sort of passageways that you see here, right? And these are called blood vessels. So these are kind of the conduits that the blood travels through to get to our muscles, our tissues, all of our different tissues. And so really that's what we're talking about when we talk about blood pressure. We're talking about how the blood is pushing against the walls of these passageways or blood vessels, right? So as the blood is traveling through here, right? And so we're going to zoom in on one of these arteries, right? Actually, blood vessels, so let me clarify that. The blood vessels, right, they have two kind of names, other names that are synonymous with blood vessels. We could have arteries, right? And those are blood vessels that are taking blood away from the heart. So often when doctors talk about blood pressure, they're really talking about the arteries. And then we have veins, right? And veins are taking blood back to the heart. But we're really going to focus on the arteries because that's usually where you get your blood pressure taken. But anyway, so let's zoom in on this artery and look at what's going on a smaller scale. So, all right, move this out of the way. And so what's happening, right, is we have this blood vessel. And so blood is flowing through it, right? And the blood, as it flows through the vessel, is pushing against the walls of the vessel, right? So we have this kind of stretching, this tension in the blood vessel wall. And that's what blood pressure is. It's this pushing, right? So it's not that different from any other kind of pressure that you see in the world, right? So for instance, like in an aquarium, right, you have this water pressure inside of the tank, right? This water is pushing against the walls of the tank. So even here, like at one small part of the tank, right, like this window that this lady is looking through, there's water pressing at every point against the window. And we know it's pressing there because if we took this window away, all the water would rush out, right? So that's what pressure is. It's this force over the area of this window, over the space of this window, right? And it's the same idea in our blood vessel. So like the blood pressure is going to be the force exerted by the blood as it travels through the vessel on this small space, this small part of the blood vessel wall, really, right? And so the problem is that if you have high blood pressure, right, you're pushing too hard on maybe this one area that's a little bit weaker than the other areas, right? And you keep stretching it and stretching it. And so you know what happens when you stretch some sort of elastic material like rubber or something, or like a balloon, right? When you keep putting water into a balloon, it kind of stretches out and you get this tension, right? And like, with any kind of material, like even like when you have a rubber band, right? You keep stretching a rubber band many, many times and eventually it gets stiff and it breaks, right? So that's the danger, right? So what can happen is you get this blood flowing through, right? If you have high blood pressure, your blood is pushing really hard against those artery walls. And maybe there's somewhere on the artery wall that, this blood pushes very hard against for a long time, like many years, and it starts to get weaker, and it starts to stretch out, and maybe balloon out, and we get this kind of bulge of blood in the artery, right? So the blood that's supposed to be going somewhere, remember we said the blood is carrying all this very important stuff like oxygen or nutrients to an organ, right? Like your brain or something, which, desperately needs oxygen and sugar. And maybe you have your sort of ballooning out here that's kind of diverting blood from where it needs to go, right? And when you start getting that kind of bulge, that's called an aneurysm. So maybe sometimes you hear that. All that means is that you have this kind of sac thing coming off of your artery. And when it really gets dangerous is when that sac actually bursts, right? You get so much blood going in there that it breaks, and you get a leak in your artery. And we call that a hemorrhage. So your artery starts leaking blood, and then you really lose a lot of blood that's supposed to be going to somewhere like your brain. And if you don't get enough blood to your brain, that can lead to big problems, like, say, a stroke, right? A stroke is when, the cells in your brain die for some reason. And one cause of it can be if you have this lack of oxygen because the blood is not getting there. So that's going to do it for this video. In the next video, we'll talk about some other kind of dangers or possible bad things that can happen when your blood pressure gets too high.